whatever these bitches chose. Yeah, what's that with me? That's a blicky. What I'm smoking, yeah, sticky. Fuck around, you get put in the dust. Yeah, she love the rounds, I put my thumb in her butt. Fuck around and get tragic. Fuck around and I'm blasting. She just keep on asking how shoot if it's plastic. Yeah, mind your business, do your job now. Yeah, we really smoking wood, bring the logs out.
Sticks and seeds, mix it to me in the weeds like gardening. You gon' have to pardon me. If the police say freeze, I'll have to leave the scene. Head back to the team, keep back, take a split back. Big smoke, nigga, big facts. I don't have to pay my fucking cash, I get it on the way. I got a side, like a quarterback away, I made a play. Hey, froze on, I'm a cool cat. Try me, oh no, please don't do that. Gotta have that green, no, I gotta have that bag. Cause some rats kill a track, and I make them overlap, that's a rap,
If I roll it, then it's a rap. If I said it, then it's a fact. I'm worried about stacking cash. I ain't worried about this and that. Yeah, so why you playing? Why you really playing? This green crack got me feeling like a Super Saiyan. Yeah, song like Goku. Shit, like Trunks. Yeah, something like that.
It's fire, Jay. It's fire.
Yeah, me and Queasy smoking fire shit. Like every time we in the booth, we give it life and shit. Yeah, I swear to God that this life again. Got plenty lives to take, I ain't got no life to give. Watch how you looking at me. And if I'm looking high, that mean I'm looking happy. No feeling compares to when I see the baggie. That mean we getting wavy, till it match the songs is
spray
grabbing.
tan, I'ma go this body, that's a good plan. I ran up a lot of money, bitch, I'm more slick. We can shake up all your plans, grinding and enjoying it. Spilling milk on all these beats, while your niggas spoil it. Blue dream, man, that's no cat, yeah, I smoke that. Eyes low from the endo. Lot of green, put 100 down like a rental.
It's fire, Jay. It's fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuck in the moonlight. Stuck in the moonlight. Take a trip to the moonlight. Yeah. I get your mood right. Smoking the moonlight. Smoking the moonlight, yeah. Smoking on moon rock. Smoking on moon rock, yeah. Take a trip to the moonlight. Take a trip to the moonlight, yeah. I get your mood right. I get your mood right, yeah. Smoking on moonlight. Smoking on moonlight, yeah. Smoking on moon rock. Smoking on moon rock, yeah. Take a trip to the moonlight. Take a trip to the moonlight, yeah. I get your mood right. I get your mood right, yeah. Smoking on moonlight. Smoking on moon rock, yeah. How do you move that? How do you move that day? You got a pool tight. You got a pool right here. Think I can swim right? I ain't got no fear. Yeah. Tell me how you keep the shit together, girl. Bands, the shit forever, girl. Grams, the shit forever, girl. I smoke forever, girl. Smoking on moonlight. Smoking on moonlight, yeah. Smoking on moon rock. Smoking on moon rock, yeah. Take a trip to the moonlight. Take a trip to the moonlight, yeah. I get your mood right. I get your mood right, yeah. Smoking on moonlight. Smoking on moonlight, yeah. Smoking on moon rock. Smoking on moon rock, yeah. Take a trip to the moonlight. Take a trip to the moonlight, yeah. I get your mood right. I get your mood right, yeah.
You ain't gotta be alone, you can come with me. I travel galaxies, you can join me in ecstasy. Trips to the moon. And there's plenty of room, you could join the crew. When I'm in the booth, like melting, smoking on the moon. I feeling, burning up some of my mind, the clouds in the cloud, not just me, we don't clown around. I ain't chasing the subject, I'm up in the clouds. I'm touching the moon, I'm touching the blush, I'm pulling the close and we floating around. Yeah. To the moon.
Diamond sounds. Yeah. You would be lying if you say you feel the shit I feel. I feel like niggas die and niggas let it kill. Yeah, I see them shot cold-blooded. I was right there, living out a nightmare. You never know where you go when you hear the gun pop. Last I'm on the phone with my bro, I hear the phone drop. I hear gunshots, oh no, no. Not just one shot, oh no, no. My grandma say that these the last days. If my life is a book, feel like the last page. So I'm chiefing on this blunt like this my last blaze. No, I'm chiefing on this blunt like this my last haze. Yeah, God, I just ask you keep protection on me. I think that's why you blessed me with this weapon on me. I had some niggas moving left and even backwards on me. That's the reason why I packed the chromie. That's the reason why I packed the blick in case the shit is sticky. I gotta make it home tonight. I know my mama missed me. I gotta make it home tonight. I got some strong, I'm trying to lie. I got some strong at home. I know right now would bless me. Yeah. You would be lying if you say you feel the shit I feel. I feel like niggas die and niggas let it kill. Yeah, I see them shot cold-blooded. I was right there, living out a nightmare.
This one for Benjay, our lives to him was everything. My pops grew up without a dad, you was the closest thing. You showed him how to be a man, and that instilled in me. But you left my life too soon, why did you have to leave? Parents tried to hide it from me, cause my heart's too young to bleed. Plus the year before, I watched the Lord hear grandpa sold away. It's okay, it's tattered on my back, I know he's watching me. Even though this life I live with pain is always stalking me. R.I.P. my nigga Cheers, hope you sleeping comfortably. Lost so many people on my side to side company. I am from a city where these bullets screaming run for me. Eyes behind my head cause I don't know who's gonna come for me. But nobody come for me, I'm peaceful to that trigger squeeze. I don't want no shine, rock my chains just like I'm Mr. T. Ask me if I do it for the clout. Nigga please, if I got a nigga in a drought. Same as me, if I'm throwing money all around. Know my niggas
Feel the way I feel. I feel like niggas die and niggas let it kill. Yeah, I see them shot cold-blooded. I was right there, living out a nightmare. Living out a nightmare. I was right there, living out a nightmare. Cold-blooded, living out a nightmare. Diamond sounds. Yeah. Diamond sounds pussy.
Give it to him raw.
Right in Q in the booth.
About to roll up a Dutch.
Pussy poppin', pussy boy. Gone, but I guess I left from salty like I cook with soy. But I'm way smooth like it's Pam, you been left with Roy. Yeah, I'm kinda funny on my office shit. Every time you see me, I be suited like an office pick. Depending how we talking, we might off this chick. See him out in traffic on this ride, bet he come off of it. But young and steady wild in the streets, rides a lot of pigs. Burning these Capones, I keep burning like a side of it. Yeah, what are we really debating here? Talking about the stats, don't wanna take it there. If we talking about stacks, we buying up the shares. Yeah, we deep, a lot of shoes, you catching every pair.
Motivating the greatest, native in your playlist. I just take shit, get no patience. You ex like me, I'm straight to boss shit. Big smoke like boss shit. Rock with waves like Boston. I'm the shoes like Boston. Me and my true sweet mosh, never take it a feet. Let's take sips of the weed. Let's make this shit a breeze. Like I was blowing on leaves. Spreading the real disease. I make him believe, I make him look easy like ABC. He might be super Christopher Reeves, but what I don't know is I'm running with these. Knock, 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 I'm coming to blow your house down, let the big bad whoop. No, I'm blowing that kush, let the thick bad woods. No, I'm blowing down foes all black in my hood. No, when I'm running up, stuck my cash and sum it up. Knees get lapped when I'm running up. Dick in the air, I'm coming up. And you window, no, I'm off the endo.
There ain't no hood on when we running up. And when they find you, gon' be looking like the thunderstruck. I'm speeding off in something looking like I stole it. Everywhere I go, I brought my weed and brought my pole in. You can see I'm grounded where I stay, I got my toes in. You can see I'm sounded, all these diamonds got me frozen. Everywhere I go, if you smell it, know it's potent. I be smoking hybrids, it's a fusion like it's Gotenks. I ain't got no time for niggas that think they know shit. Put holes in his head like a dolphin, Josh Rosen. All this gold around around me, I'm the boy, know I'm chosen. I be on my shit, this ain't no shit to put your nose in.
Don't put your nose in the ghost business, I'm chosen. They know if they try my road, I'm equipped with niggas, put forks in them. I raised the stakes cause I made one. Don't play, son. Nigga get played, son. Like DeAndre Ayton. My team link up for the high life. No mill, I stay gonna put life. Was like when I fly in the night sky. Don't try nothing, boy, young guy. Your buzz water down like Bud Light. When I fight night, this girl good night.
Yeah. Yeah. Diamonds. Dutchie. Shoot you and your nephew. Hit this chopper, sneeze, then it'll bless you. Geek squad, brought the Mac and brought the tattoo. If I get a band, I need to get two. What's the issue? Shoot you and your nephew. Hit this chopper, sneeze, then it'll bless you. Geek squad, brought the Mac and brought the tattoo. If I get a band, I gotta get two. What's the issue? I don't want no lip when I'm rolling up. Don't want no cold shoulder, I want shoulder up. Keep it 100 when niggas blunted. I like your mouth full now when you running. Smoking boofy out the Dutchie. Hexy hammer on me, do not touch me. My ice and jewelry, guess it's screaming fuck me. My internet beef is love to duck me. Get it poppin' like the say I couldn't, like to say I wouldn't. In the lab, I'm really cooking. Smoking strong, man, I'm smoking cookie. This meat meal, this big L. Yeah, nigga, that Philly Brooklyn, some shit past smoking kidnap. Yeah, I guess the kush really took him. Shoot you and your nephew. Hit this chopper, sneeze, then it'll bless you. Geek squad, brought the Mac and brought the tattoo. If I get a band, I need to get two. What's the issue? Shoot you and your nephew. Hit this chopper, sneeze, then it'll bless you. Geek squad, brought the Mac and brought the tattoo. If I get a band, I gotta get two. What's the issue?
James Dolan, how he fought and he can't hold the Knicks. Reaching for my pocket, see more, I slit the wrist. We blowing heat, toting free, throw I miss. I don't smoke no swish, and my niggas like the bricks. If you make me snap, I'll get the clapping with my click. Press me like a crucifix, I got some shit quit. I ain't got no wacky, but my bullets got some zip. I don't need no melee with my pulley, got a grip. Can't get my balls on the hill like it's Chino. Need 3 B's in my bank for the ego. Wherever we go, it's a big casino. Niggas started acting up again, super chill.
Yeah.
Pablo, are you proud of me? Yeah. Are you proud of me? Shit, proud of myself.
it's been a long time coming. I've been hands-on checks, I be thumbing. She say I'm handsome, you know that she coming. Red on the right side, you know how I'm bumming. I've been rolling around to some real shit lately. That mean I've been.
I guess y'all couldn't hear me. So we about to get into this live stream. I am at work. I'm gonna have to clock in a second. All right. What is good, people? What is good? What is happening? It is your boy PvbloGrey, and this is the first time me doing a live stream, man. So let me try my best. There we go. Let me try my best to give y'all what y'all need. So today's topic is what is Juneteenth. So let me let y'all know right now, I am quite ignorant. I don't even know what Juneteenth is all about, to be real with you. So we gonna find out what the fuck is going on. So my bad, I'm hitting the mic. So if you just like me and you just as ignorant, you don't know what Juneteenth is, you about to find out with me. So let's start this ride. Alright. Alright. Sorry man, y'all seen what I was prepping for. Alright, so I started with a Google search of what Juneteenth is, right? And you know, this is what we got on here, man. History of Juneteenth. As you can see, I pressed it and I clicked the Wikipedia link. Alright, so let's see. Got the Juneteeth.com and you got the history, right? I don't like reading that much, so I'm gonna try to go through this as quick as possible. Juneteenth is the oldest national holiday celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States, dating back to 1865. It was on June 19th that the Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. Note, this was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official January 1st, 1963. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on the Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865, the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. All right, that's just the first paragraph. We're not gonna get into too much of that. All right, man. Let me see what Wikipedia got to say about all this. Man, hold up. Let me check to see how we looking on here. All right. One second, people. 1 second. All right. So, according to Wikipedia, known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, Texas state holiday, basically saying the same shit. So what I got from this so far is that it's when everyone basically confirmed the news, which is 2 years after Lincoln declared, the slaves to be free through the Emancipation Proclamation. So it went down in Texas, right? 1965. So if anybody like me, I like to go to YouTube. I tried to go back to see videos from back in the day before any of what I see now was influenced due to media and certain agendas pushed by certain political parties. So that's why I tried to go that backdate on videos about Juneteenth from a while ago. As you can see, that's what I searched in the YouTube caption or search bar, Juneteenth 2008, just getting the idea of where I was looking, but not all of them came
Now,
that far.
Juneteenth is a huge moment in America.
As you can see, I didn't open this yet, but this was 2020. They did this on the 12th of June. So
American history, but not everyone knows.
This is KHOU. I think this is Houston, a newscast channel in Houston. So let's see what she got to say.
Its significance. The holiday marks the moment that happened in Galveston. Duke Carter explains why we celebrate Juneteenth.
You've heard of Juneteenth, but what exactly is it? You're probably wondering it's probably a day of the week. Well, yeah, partly you're correct. Well, according to Juneteeth.com, Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the ending of slavery in the United States. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th that the Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Grange, he arrived in Galveston, Texas, with the news that the war had ended and that the enslaved, they were now free. Now, note that this was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official January 1st, 1863. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on the Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April of
I'm going to pause it right here. If you haven't realized by now, this man has repeated the exact same thing that was said in both those paragraphs.
1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. So the
forces were what? Alright, so finally what?
And the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. So the former slaves, they were pleased with this news from the general. So many left the plantation and went north. Others wanted to reach family to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. So the former slaves,
Man Ray, right off the website.
They were pleased with this news from the general. So many left the plantation and went north. Others wanted to reach family members and went to states like Arkansas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. Now, the celebration of June 19th was coined Juneteenth and grew with more participation from descendants. The Juneteenth celebration was a time for reassuring each other, for praying, and for gathering for remaining family members. Now, there's a range of activities to entertain the masses, and many of which continue in tradition today. So you have rodeos, fishing, barbecue, and baseball. Those are just a few of the typical Juneteenth activities you may witness today. Juneteenth almost always focuses on education and self-improvement. Often guest speakers are brought in, and the elders are also called upon to share the stories of the past. Now, prayer services were also a major part of these celebrations. Juneteenth...
Yeah, that's what's up. Alright. Let's see what this video got to say. This video was in uploaded November 9th, 2015. Oh, and this is Minnesota history, so.
This world is one great battlefield with forces all array. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. I'll overcome someday. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday.
Like the Civil War itself, slavery didn't end with one decisive act. After the Battle of Antietam in September 1862, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1863. It declared all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states to be free. Northern abolitionists welcomed the proclamation as a first step, while Southern slave owners ignored it. Ending slavery would take a constitutional amendment passed in January 1865, Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox in April 1865, the heroism of many enslaved families, and the Union Army itself to personally deliver the news to the most remote corners of the conquered Confederacy.
The proclamation that Lincoln signed didn't find its way into Texas, which is where my father's family is from, and the Rambo family, until mid-June of 1865.
On June 19th, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston and personally delivered the news.
The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor.
There was a lot of celebration. There was also a lot of sadness, a lot of concern, a lot of fear. Both enslaved Africans and those who held slaves didn't know what really to do now. As freed Americans, where were we to go?
"150 years later, June 19th is a day of remembrance and celebration.
I think my first Juneteenth celebration was when I was 6 or 7, because I remember roasted ears of corn. And this was in Austin, Texas. And then coming here, I was surprised and really astounded to find out that Minneapolis, St. Paul have such a strong connection with Juneteenth. It stands to reason with the number of people who probably migrated this far north who brought with them that tradition.
Every year in Texas, Minnesota, and around the country, Juneteenth is marked with music, food, and fellowship.
We are celebrating at Mississippi Regional Park. There's all ages here. I just see all kinds.
I just want to say, man, it is a lot of black people up in the Minnesota area, in case y'all don't know, man. That's like, I don't know how to explain it from the map. Let me look at Google Map real quick. I'll pull it up on the laptop, but I'm not trying to distract that and mess up with my flow real quick. But from what it looked like, anybody in Louisiana, Mississippi, they just would have went straight north. So that's what I would have to assume. But anyway, back to the video.
Kinds of people and colors.
It's amazing to me that, especially among the African-American culture, we have a little bit of a fear of embracing that history, because there's some shame connected to slavery. I don't feel that way. I feel that is such an important part of who I am as a person. The strength that I have within me comes from that struggle.
African-American Independence Day. So we're celebrating. Our day of liberation, our day of liberation.
It's important to have opportunities for us to celebrate our oneness, our wholeness, our completeness, our dynamic selves. It's vital to African-American people to have an opportunity, a date that heralds the importance of who we are as a people, what we've been through as a people.
Juneteenth gives African-American communities a chance to reflect on their ancestors' struggles and achievements, and also to spotlight current issues.
There is a lot going on in this world. There's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and a lot of uneasiness. The foundation you have can kind of give you a little bit more of a sure footing, because you can look and say, well, wait, my family made it through this hatred. Somehow they made it through. Yeah, so take that strength and go up to the next level.
That's cool. So what's this about? Why all Americans should honor Juneteenth. This dropped today. This is by Vox. Yeah. So let's see what they got to say about this.
Juneteenth is a deeply emotional moment for enslaved people because for decades, for centuries, enslaved people prayed for, hoped for, fought for in the form of slave rebellions, running away, bought their freedom when they could. And if you read slave narratives, if you listen to spirituals from the era of slavery, you know that enslaved people longed for freedom. This was something that had been hoped for, but many believe may never come.
Daddy Martha promised to give me $40 a month in fed. The lots of the boys say they ain't want it. They rather go free, you know.
Being able to go
That's the realest shit I ever heard.
wherever they wanted, being able to wonder about. For enslaved people, it was an expression of their freedom.
Well, that photo was the one that long missed photo. One of our white folks made. He come along, we all sitting on the fence, and the colored children come along and asked her did she want to go with him. And she said yes, she mounted one of them horses. She went on with them. I never did see her and hit her no more.
When I think about Juneteenth, I think about it in the context of Emancipation Day celebrations that began January 1, 1863. They took on a whole new meaning when slavery was formally abolished after 1865. You would have had African American veterans who fought in the Civil War be prominent in these celebrations, dressed in their military garb, speeches from enslaved people, the most prominent black politicians singing of hymns, spirituals, discussions of registering to vote. Enslaved people celebrating in public their newfound freedom was an act of resistance. Because we have to remember, slavery came to an end after a 4 years bloody Civil War. Still the bloodiest conflict in American history. Many people in the South and in the nation who did not want to see slavery abolished fought tooth and nail to block the 13th Amendment. The abolition of slavery created a huge humanitarian crisis in the South. Suddenly 4 million people have very little means to take care of themselves, to support themselves, and do so in a really hostile environment. So the military was necessary to make sure that enslaved people got the food, the medicine, the shelter that they needed in order to survive. They're also there to protect, to the extent that that was possible, free people from violence, from recriminations, from slaveholders, from Confederates who still hadn't given up the fight.
And I remember and the Yankees stopped here, and the Yankees stopped right on the corner of Spa, and the first people know, we go to ground team, and the people hang over the snow. That's the punishment they got. Next time you see, they come all troop Yankees, all riding horses. Hang on. I said, Mama, where are they going? They're all going home now.
When the last federal troops leave the South, it's a signal to Southerners the federal government wasn't going to put its might into ensuring the civil rights of black people would be observed. You have 20, 30 years later, black people being lynched in public, and there isn't a federal anti-lynching law to protect them. In most communities in America, there's a history of lynching and racial violence, and very few communities have marked that, commemorated that. Every decade since the end of slavery, black people have been more educated, accrued more wealth, more status in American society. Every decade since 1865. But there's been one constant, and that constant is the presence of random racist violence. What I see in George Floyd's murder was a white police officer attempting to dominate and to subdue a black man who was not resisting, who could not resist. Even though slavery came to an end in 1865, the desire to master and dominate black bodies did not. And we have never dealt with that. These are the kinds of stark realities that are highlighted during Juneteenth. If black people's lives can be expunged through racist violence and no one is held accountable, how free are we? Are we free?
Shit. Good video from Vox, man. I learned a lot, I guess. Oh, well. You know I had to come across this, man.
The president gave an interview.
Hold up. So, this is CNN clip. And it says, Trump says he made Juneteenth famous. See Lemon's reaction. That's Don Lemon, of course. I'm probably not going to play all of this because I planned on making this video not too long. Trying to squeeze this motherfucker in before 10 because I'm trying to take me a little smoke break. So let's get into it.
Interview to the Wall Street Journal in which he says he made Juneteenth famous, that, quote, nobody had ever heard of it before. Juneteenth, of course, commemorates the end of slavery in the U.S., and as you know,
Before we go on, I'm just going to say this. Is this all they're about to say this man said? Because look, we could be real and be like, yeah, bro, that he didn't make it famous. Everybody knew. When he could technically be, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, he could be talking about the people he know. You know, the majority, those people didn't know what the fuck Juneteenth is. Black people, sure, they gonna know what Juneteenth is. Sorry, I'll keep tapping the mic. Or they should. I mean, I really didn't know. And then you got the white people they gonna be around that's gonna know of Juneteenth. Especially like the people in Texas where it obviously grew from. But honestly, just from that quote, I could just take it like that. When he's saying nobody's ever heard of it, he's probably talking about the people he know. But on.
scheduled his Tulsa rally because of backlash against holding it on that date amid racial tensions in the nation, especially in a city where a racist massacre in 1921 left the once prosperous black district burned to the ground, more than 10,000 of the black residents there homeless, and an estimated 300 dead. Let's bring in Wall Street Journal White House reporter.
And if you don't know what she's talking about the is it Tulsa riots or the burning of Black Wall Street, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm hoping I'm not misquoting the situation, but I know it's in the same area. And yeah, you could call them black people, you can call them aboriginals, you could call them the Native American, but they were people that look like me, and they happen to always be here and probably didn't come on a slave ship. That's just my view. But anyway,
Michael Bender. So Michael, tell us about this interview.
Check out Dan Calloway.
Especially the president's comments here about Juneteenth, because it seems like an admission that he didn't know what Juneteenth was.
I think that's correct. We talked about that a little bit in the context of him having to change the date of his rally, and he told me that he started polling people around him, as he usually does on any range of subjects, about what Juneteenth was and who knew what about it. He couldn't find anyone, he told me, who knew what Juneteenth was until he asked a black Secret Service agent who informed him, as you said, that it's a commemoration of freeing the slaves.
So I'm gonna leave it like that. I don't know what else this video has to say, but I guess this nigga just said exactly what the fuck I just said. The people that he obviously fucking knew didn't know shit about it until he asked somebody black who knew. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. We're gonna keep playing the fucking video, and if it's nothing, we don't see nothing, they ain't saying nothing, we gonna skip it.
That's stunning. I just interviewed the reporter who did this interview, and he said that the president was he hadn't heard of Juneteenth, right? And he was asking people around him if they knew about it, and so he was giving off the impression that he didn't have people around him who knew, and it was actually a black Secret Service agent who told him what it was. I wonder what your reaction is to the president having no idea what this is and surrounding himself with people who have no idea what this is and scheduling his rally in the middle of racial unrest on this day.
Well, I laugh for two things. One, because it is funny.
And I'm gonna just say this: y'all motherfuckers acting like y'all surrounded with people that know about it. Other than Don Lemon, who's on, who we obviously can see is black. Did anyone else know about this? If you didn't hear it, I'm talking about anybody at CNN, anybody who didn't hear this from Don Lemon or anybody black. Tell me, did you know about Juneteenth prior to today? That's what I want to know.
And two, because it's laughable, right? And it's serious. The president of the United States should know what Juneteenth is, but this president doesn't know. And pretending that he did and that he made Juneteenth famous, everyone knows that that is a farce and that it's what he does on a daily basis. It is a lie. This president he doesn't know about history in general. So why would he know about something like Juneteenth when it relates to African Americans and the struggle that black people have had in this country? He doesn't know. He didn't know who Frederick Douglass.
All right. So I'm gonna just stop it because I was really hoping they was gonna play the clip of this man saying this. I'm not about to look for it. I don't really give a fuck that much. But that's all we got to say on that. I just thought I'd play it because somebody gonna have something to say about it. So we addressed that shit here. So we gonna skip this shit because that's not important. But yeah, so this led me to finding out some other shit, and basically at the same time, well, I'm gonna put it like this, man. I'm a watcher, a subscriber of Young Pharaoh, Dane Calloway, and a bunch of other people who know about black people being here before the claim of Africans being brought here on boats, right? And those same people or black people that have always been here, or the Aboriginals or the Native Americans, they've fought in wars that liberated the people. And this is off some research I've also done too, but I'm open to the Juneteenth idea. I kind of want to know about it so I can see if it adds to something or takes away from it. But basically, I seen the post Pharaoh put on his live, or not his live, but his story on Instagram, basically saying like Juneteenth is a lie. The Gullah Wars freed the slaves and shit. I kind of agree with that. I can't say for sure because I don't have the most information on it, and I'm not gonna speak on nothing I know, and I'm not gonna draw an opinion off some shit I don't know. So I tried to look up some videos about the shit that was going on in the Gullah Wars and try to play and see if there's any links or discrepancies between the stories. So this is what it led me to. This other one is pretty fucking long, and I'm probably not gonna get to that because I'm trying to cut this video short. I was supposed to stop this at 10, but let's get to it.
This land is my land. This land is my land. Sam, I think you're singing the song wrong. No, I'm not. Well, yeah, actually, the song goes, "This land is your land." Well, that sucks. It's the early 1700s, and literally no one lives in Florida. This was mostly due to...
I want to say shout out History House Productions, and for this clip, it's called The Seminole Wars. People don't know. I forgot the explanation behind what what Seminoles actually stood for, but it has something to do about being freed or something like that. But let's do
the smallpox, but also because Disney World was nowhere to be seen and old people hadn't been invented yet. However, as we all know, move your meat, lose your seat comes into effect after a while, so a bunch of other American Indians, mostly Creek, decided that they'd go ahead and settle the area. The Spanish people in Florida started to call these newcomers cimarrones, which sort of maybe kind of translates into wild ones, so when the English took over in 1763, they were like, let me mispronounce this, and started calling all the Indians in Florida Seminoles. The relatively small Seminole population was further bolstered by many runaway slaves from the 13 colonies who soon assimilated into the culture, becoming black Seminoles. One of these black Seminoles was named John Horse and lived a pretty cool life, so you
So that's how they tell the story. Let's go back.
He mispronounced this and started calling all the Indians in Florida Seminoles. The relatively small Seminole population was further bolstered by many runaway slaves from the 13 colonies who soon assimilated into the culture, becoming black Seminoles. One of these black Seminoles was named John Horse and lived a pretty cool life, so you should go check out Jack Rackham, who made a video about him. After you watch this video, please pay attention to me.
According to the history, all Seminoles were black.
After America got revolutioned, Spain took over Florida again and was pretty chill about just letting the Seminoles do their thing. However, one of their things involved siding with the British in the War of 1812 and raiding a bunch of American towns. Luckily for the Seminoles, the U.S. hadn't figured out the difference between them and the Creek, so they just ended up fighting the Creek. Unluckily, the U.S. couldn't figure out the difference between them and the Creek. Alright, time for you to leave. What? Yeah, the Creek lost the war, so now you guys have to leave. But we're not Creek. Yes, you are. No, we're not. Okay, I don't get it. Johnson, can you get the cavalry in here? The Seminoles...
And if you don't get what that just means, basically, if you look like these motherfuckers, black, you gotta go. And the Creek, if you don't know, were Indians. I don't know why I got these little bugs in here. Were Indians or Native American or black aboriginals who were along the coast of Georgia, and even some parts of South Carolina and some parts of North Carolina, and they were also split up into other different names. That's a whole different story. Please go check out Dan Calloway, man. I'm just here to make you think. Shout out to that, man. He can go more in depth with that, but these Creek, and they were the same people technically, and that's what the issue was.
Weren't exactly stoked about this situation, so they killed a bunch of Americans on a boat, which made the U.S. mad for some reason. But since Spain controlled Florida, it's not like they could just walk in and attack. Turns out that Andrew Jackson was fine just straight up invading Spain without government permission and then hunting down the Seminoles with his army. So, I mean, what can you do? Since Florida was already overrun with American troops, Spain decided that they might as well make some money.
He said Andrew Jackson. Let's see. How long was she a president? (1829) through 1837. Okay.
Money off this and sold Florida to the U.S. for $5 million, which is honestly way more than the state is worth, even today. Now that Florida was an American territory, the war ramped up against the Seminoles. They were forced to sue for peace in 1823 and were relocated to a reservation in the swampy interior of the state. All around, kind of a bummer. It's 1828, and guess who was just elected President of the United States? Here's a hint. He's the Seminoles' favorite white guy. He was a war hero in the War of 1812. His name rhymes with Mandrew... It's Andrew Jackson is the President of the United States. In a big plot twist, it turned out that Andrew Jackson wasn't a huge fan of American Indians and decided that they should probably all go move somewhere else. The Seminoles were a little bit annoyed with this, so they put up a bit of a fuss. Finally, the U.S. agreed to let the Seminole chiefs survey their assigned land out west before they were decided to go. Yep, looks like Oklahoma. Thanks for the offer, but I think we'll have to pass on this one. Well, actually, you signed here saying that you'd move west. I shall make the white man red with blood. Yep, you don't seem dangerous. Here, have a gun. That dude was named Osceola, and he was especially salty about this whole getting cheated out of his land thing. He quickly began organizing other chiefs who opposed moving west, and with their help decided to go to war. The Seminoles struck first when, on December 28, 1835, Osceola assassinated the local U.S. ambassador, and another group ambushed 110 American soldiers, killing all but 2 of them. Just imagine it. One moment you're walking along through some swampy quagmire thinking, yeah, put some mouse ears over there, a retirement center over there, maybe we can make something out of this place. And the next moment you're lying on the ground, riddled with bullet holes. Pretty upsetting. The American government thought so too and sent 1,000 soldiers under the command of General Edmund Gaines, but he got pinned down by a Seminole counterattack and was only able to retreat after he received reinforcements. Next up was General Winfield Scott, who planned to trap the Seminoles in a huge pincer movement with 5,000 men, but disease was a thing, so that failed. After that disaster, the governor of Florida, Richard K. Call, took over in the fall of 1836 and was able to kick the Seminoles out of some towns in the north, but was unable to destroy them and allowed them to slip away into the swamps. Finally, this guy named Thomas Jessup decided that he'd give this Seminole war thing a shot and took over command of the army later in 1836. Instead of trying to fight one big battle, Jessup focused on wearing the Seminoles out by fighting a bunch of little battles. This actually worked pretty well, and the Seminoles were soon growing weary of the war and started surrendering to the Americans and gathering in emigration centers for their journey west. Osceola saw this and wasn't super on board, so he broke into the main emigration center and convinced all the Seminoles there that Oklahoma was stupid and that they'd be better off fighting the Americans. Jessup felt pretty betrayed by the Seminoles at this point, so he figured that the rules of war just didn't apply anymore. So he started capturing a bunch of Seminole leaders, including Osceola, under flags of truce, which is just objectively not cool. Now that he had the upper hand again, Jessup launched a major offensive south with 9,000...
Basically, they cheated with the rules of war. If you don't know, based off the United Nations, there's rules of war, and if you violate those, everybody coming at you. So...
men, but was unable to completely dislodge the Seminoles from the swamps. However, with all their leaders in jail, the Seminoles couldn't fight on for much longer, so they offered to stop the war if they were allowed to keep living in the south of Florida. This seemed fairly reasonable, so the U.S. was like, No. Interestingly, Jessup kind of felt like a scumbag about this whole thing, so he actually resigned as general and was replaced by Zachary Taylor. Taylor fought mostly a defensive war, but was able to slowly grind down the Seminoles enough where by 1841 most Seminoles had left Florida, and there were only about 500 left hiding in the swamps. This brought an end to the Second Seminole War. Florida became a state in 1845, but no one wanted to move there because they heard the land was stupid and the Seminoles were some G's, so Florida started to apply pressure to get the Seminoles to leave. By late 1855, the Seminoles were getting angsty because the U.S. kept trying to take their land. They began raiding settlements and killing settlers, which wasn't super convenient for the U.S., so Florida raised a 400-man militia to kick the Seminoles out once and for all. Problem was that half the militia had to grow crops so that the other half wouldn't starve, so only 200 men could be patrolling the peninsula at any given time. The citizens of Florida thought that this was dumb, so they called in the army, who built a ton of forts and started to wear down the Seminoles again. Scattered fighting continued for a few years, but by 1858, less than 200 Seminoles remained in Florida. However, these few survivors never surrendered their land, and there are still Seminoles in Florida today. Once again, big shout out to my boy Jack Rackham, who made a video on the life of at any given time. The citizens of Florida thought that this was dumb, so they called in the army, who built.
Alright, I was waiting on the date. So let me just do a little research, see when they document the Gullah Wars ending. Alright, let's see what this man from Yale has to say about it. I'm gonna go to this. Not seeing what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a date. I need to know when that third war ended. So it ended in 1858. Well, if I had more time, I'd do a little bit more research on that. But basically, man, that's what we found out about Juneteenth today. So what can I say? What did we learn from today's Juneteenth research? I guess that's what you could call it. Shit. I say during, I want to say 2 years after the Proclamation of Emancipation, when all the forces of the North were able to actually come as far as Texas and able to get the news to push the executive order that was signed by Lincoln, that's when, you know, it happened on June 19th, whatever the date was, 1860 something. I don't know. One of those dates. I'm not about to look back. But it happened 2 years after the Proclamation of Emancipation, or Emancipation Proclamation, whatever it is. Yeah. And since then, the date's been celebrated as like liberation for black slaves and things like that. So yeah, I learned something new today. I'm hoping that you did too. As far as the news source, cool, I guess. Some of those videos, I'm not gonna lie, the more recent videos are pretty politically based. I'm gonna just say that, but it's all good. You know, still learn something. Other than that, man, it's my first time doing a live stream. I'm hoping y'all enjoy it. I don't think anybody watched right now, but if you did, I do appreciate it. If not, man, you're gonna be able to see this in my it's gonna be a playlist, live stream playlist. It's gonna be titled, you know, Juneteeth. What is it? 2020 PvbloGrey. Yeah. So yeah, man, that's about it. Appreciate it. You like what I'm doing here? Like, comment, subscribe. Happy Juneteenth, man. Stay strong.